Now we are just to be really quick in talking about W3C Identity Standards under Europe and also the challenges we are facing. So I'm Simone Onofri and I am the Senior Principal Security Specialist, and in shorter term I'm just leading the security at W3C. I also work in different groups such as the Security Interest Group, Web AppSec, Web Authentication, FedED, and also the Threat Modeling Community Group. And if you are curious about identity standards, there's the identity report, and it's updated time to time to stay up to date with the landscape. And I also support the security and privacy questionnaire and also several threat models. Notable threat models are the decentralized identities. We are also working on a web threat model. One of the latest one is also the agentic AI web browsers and also the human web to put the user in the center of the model and not only computer systems. In general terms, so we are just going to quickly in there are identity standards, use cases, and more important things, the challenges we are facing. So identity models, just to be really quick, we have centralized identity models when a single entity, the provider, is also the same website you are logging on. For example, if I'm logging in my email provider, using the credentials provided by email provider, this is centralized. Then we have federated identity, when there are two entities, one which is the identity provider, for example, just to use a use case, my W3C account, and also when I'm going to use to log in, for example, on an external website, maybe owned by W3C, so I can reuse my credential. Then the latest identity model we have now in the world is the decentralized, with also a lot of buzz inside this topic. We have three entities. We have the holder, so the user, which has a nice wallet on his mobile phone or her mobile phone, but also we are thinking also about web wallets. There's an issuer, which is the entity that just provide a credential to the user, and then the user are free to use their credential whenever they want. For example, in a verifier, that can be also a website. In this scenario, we have different W3C standards. In centralized, which is the most also used, is Web Authentication. So we don't have to have password to log in on a website. There are different approaches, such as this public and private key architecture. This is also good for avoiding phishing, and also it's often connected with the biometric of your mobile device. There are keys can be roaming, so there are a lot of features. In general, password can be compromised if we don't have a password. It's not solving all the problems of authentication, but a specific use case, and we are pretty happy with this technology, and now we are going to have the level 3, and we are just to send the CR request in a few. Then we have also the working on federated credentials management, which is to mediate the federated identity using the browser. This is important because this can enable to important implementers to avoid third-party cookies, because this is what, so third-party cookies are used for two main things. Apart from advertising, which is not luckily is not my problem, because there are other people in W3C taking care of these things, and also for federated identity. Then on decentralized, of course, which is the latest model, we have a lot of technologies, also a lot of work in progress. So we have Verifiable Credentials 2.0, which is a family of standards. We have also our Verifiable Credentials API to issue and present the credentials. We have decentralized identifiers. We have also different DID methods that can be used with different technologies, and we are going to look some interesting use cases. We have Digital Credentials API to mediate with browser the presentation of a credential. This is particularly useful in Europe because it was an idea from Europe using credentials on the web, and we are just collaborating to find a good way to mitigate some threats. We also have verifiable credential barcodes and many more. This is just a diagram to clarify. So we have starting from the bottom, we have the holder with a wallet and a browser, and all the technologies that we can map. And for example, there was also a reference in the European architecture for the IDAS 2.0, which is the latest regulation for identity, for example, to use web authentication to authenticate to the wallet. Then if you are using credentials on the web, it's good to mediate with the Digital Credentials API. Then also we can have for presentation, but not with the browser, the barcodes. Even if personally I don't really like barcodes, but they were just so there are no better alternatives in some cases. So we have also, in general, also full stack decentralized identity standards. And in particular for verifiable credentials, as you can see, and we will just come back in the latest challenge, you can see there are a lot of formats that we can support and a lot of flexibility we have on our verifiable credential. Just some use cases. There was the federated identity in Europe. This is mainly based on OpenID Connect, and this can benefit from federated credentials management. And there are, in particular in Europe, we can see that there are one of the big challenge, which is interoperability. Also because in different member states, we have different approaches to federated identity. There are some examples. In Italy, for example, you have an identity provider, not the government, but some trusted private companies from the government. In Spain, we can have the identity provider, the Spanish tax agency, and of course, I can have online or verification in presence. Estonia, which is one of the most precursor of this technology, they started with smart cards. And there was a lot of interesting use cases about different member states. Even if at the end in Europe, the regulation evolved, because if we know that there was a lot of new technology around the world, in Europe we are very nice in creating laws for technology. And so we have also IDAS 2.0, which is in shorter term to having decentralized credentials and identities for all of us as a citizen. And one of the main documents is the architecture reference framework, and this includes Web Authentication, Verifiable Credentials, and also Digital Credentials API. One of the main challenge of this regulation, but this is also valid for other part of the world, this is just stated in the law, so it's a good example. We need to have selective disclosure. So if I would like to share only my birthday or only my age, I should do detaching this from my, for example, driving license. We should use pseudonym, so not my name and surname, but something maybe derived or more anonymous on that. And also some great privacy requirements, for example, to unlinkability, avoiding correlation. All the use must be authorized by the user and privacy preserving technology. From technical perspective, if we take a regulation and we cascade into technical requirements, this is one of the nice things we are doing now. Of course, it's like cascading from high-level requirements to technical requirements. And one of the most interesting thing we are working on is the Digital Credentials API. I just show the diagram. Then on my slides, you can see also the video and a nice demonstration. So we have the holder, which is the user. We have a wallet, we have a browser, and of course we have a website, which is a verifier with that would like to have the credentials, for example, for doing something. So this is a user-initiated approach, so no strange pop-ups around the world. Just clicking, this is activated after I request the access to a specific resource. The website will send me a presentation request. And of course, I can choose from my wallet because maybe I have my driving license, I have my passport, I have my, I don't know, university diploma or these kind of things. And then the browser just encapsulates this using other protocols to send this credential to the website. The website is going to verify and using another flow because this depends on the credential format and credential profile. And also this is part of our headache in security and privacy because having verification in a privacy preserving way, it's complex. And then after this verification, the website can grant or deny the access to the resource. And I just skip the video, you can look. So in general things we have, and you can also have a demonstration on Digital Credentials Dev, just you have just to enable on your browser the specific flag. So first thing, we ask the user to trust the website. Then after trusting the website, there was this secure UX to select, for example, the wallet if you want to share also with a certified origin on digitalcredentials.dev. Then we are going to pass on the third screen on the wallet control. Also, the wallet can implement some checks, for example, if they trust or not the website. And then finally, we have verified data to share with the website. We also have a cross-device flow. I'm just skipping the video. Cross-device flow is similar to the web authentication. So if you already used passkeys on the web, the technology under the hood is the same. So it's the same protocol. So we are going to always trusting the site with our to send our data. Then we have a QR code. This is a FIDO QR code, pretty much similar to the web authentication. And then, of course, there are some checks. So we put the user in the loop to understand if the user would like to trust this request, and then just enabling this kind of sharing this credential. There are also some use cases of technologies, DID, for example, W3C technologies in Europe. And one example is the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, which is a blockchain. And so we can support blockchains also with the DID, because DID is a meta model, and all the people can develop their DID methods. And for example, we have in this case a natural person with DID key, and like public-private keys, which is pretty common in particular for in cryptography. And the important thing was the analysis that European blockchain made on the DID methods, because you will be required to have a security and privacy consideration section. And also they established some specific threats related to GDPR, providing suggestion to implementers. And on the same site, we have legal entities that can be represented by the DID keys, so public key infrastructure, or also a specific functionality to interact with the European blockchain. And with a lot of interesting features, there are already some projects for example, product traceability, cross-border credentials for academia, and social security documents. So it's something really interesting and implemented. And thinking about the ID methods into the wallet, we have some different methods used. And in particular, there was one from Switzerland. So they are also voted a few weeks ago to have digital credentials, not without a lot of people interested. It was more like 51% agreed to have these credentials, but the government is trying to do their best. And for example, they are using DID with web, so it's not based on blockchain, but they added some features, for example, for verifiable history and for key rotation, and it's an interesting. Another usage of a wallet with verifiable credentials from W3C is the Spanish age verification. So they have a specific privacy requirement, and it's a pilot, but it's an interesting use of this technology. We also created a threat model out of this solution to understand better, but it's an interesting use case for an end-to-end wallet with W3C technologies. And because we know that age verification is an hard topic, but IAB and W3C held a workshop on age-based restriction on content access, and a report will be out in the next coming weeks. If you're curious, that was held in London, and there was a lot of interest in UK because of their new law. Just to end my presentation with the two challenges we have on identity standards. First one, interoperability. This is important for Europe because we are different member states, and so we need interoperability within us, but also with the rest of the world. And this is how W3C technology can help a lot. And in particular, we can have verifiable credentials, and because we can support a lot of credentials format, so it's just a verifiable container we can put inside a lot of different formats, from JWT or JOT, this is the correct presentation, the selective disclosure JOT, CBOR, which is also the same used by ISO mobile driving license, and we have a lot of cryptographic support, both from normal cryptography, also BBS, which is a standards that's developed in IETF for zero-knowledge proof. And also we are working on post-quantum cryptography in credentials community group. Not only, we can have also interoperability on the data layer, which is probably most important and is one of the most interesting features of verifiable credential. So we can have linked data. so also interoperability on data, and this is already compatible as is, so for free, with other technologies in Europe, for example, that they are using linked data, for example, the digital product passport. And in fact, you can see in a nice graph of academic credential. Also, another point, even if, as I said, I don't like QR codes, this can be used to use verifiable credentials, so the same credential, but on a different media. So there was an experiment by Credentials Community Group, and they are going to implement in US on driving license, if I remember well. So we can have also verifiable credentials embedded in a QR code, better than nothing, and in particular, better than a URL. Another challenge we are engaging with is doing our technology with security, privacy, and human rights in our mind. And this is in Europe particularly important because of GDPR, but it's something that also we are discussing with United Nations about these topics. We are using a risk-based approach. We have a lot of questionnaire, security and privacy questionnaire, also other questionnaires for impact, also accessibility in theory is a human right, also part of the internationalization can be linked to a human right. And this is one of the latest experiments from yesterday night. We are using facilitation techniques to analyze also high-level threats and harm. This is an example using Lego Serious Play. So there was people building physically their threat. And for example, we found some important use cases about ethnic and religious profiling, and also if these credentials are used and digital identities are used for discrimination. There was on the center, for example, the different level of discrimination. So we have, for example, the brick with only one eye, the one with two eyes, the one with the crown. So that's a different concept. And also another participant just was thinking about this unlawful use of ID, and this is just a stair from with the person on the bottom and a potential government that would like to arm the person on the top with a school, and the different steps that represents also the threat of problems inside the government. So if we don't design the technology correctly, this can be abused. Maybe this can be abused by disgruntled employee or something. Thank you.